It's time now for the K.C. Ingram Show on WSTU. The opinions expressed are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WSTU. WSTU does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WSTU. It's time to call in with your questions and comments at 220-9788, 220-WSTU. And now, here's K.C. Ingram.
Good morning and another happy Wednesday here in Stewart. I have a wonderful show on tap. I have two of my favorite guests in the studio. They both are repeat guests. To my right, we have Senator Gail Harrell. How are you doing today, Senator?
I am wonderful, and thank you so much for having us.
It is absolutely my pleasure. I am so excited to hear about everything that's happened in the last session. I know, things were really difficult with COVID this last year, but session was super busy.
Yes,
Lots
and
of
a very,
updates.
very successful session. I think we got a lot done.
Oh, can't wait to hear about it. And in the back, we have Miss Marcia Powers. She is CEO of the Early Learning Coalition of Okeechobee, Martin, and Indian River counties. And of course, we also know Marcia is the chair of the school board here in Martin County. So welcome, Marcia. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well,
Excited to be here.
I'm excited, and I brought these two guests together because both of them work with our kids, and they have legislation dealing with the children in the area. And that's really what we're going to primarily focus on with this show, because both of you interact, and I know, Marcia, you were excited about a lot of the things that Gail was able to accomplish while up in Tallahassee. So, Senator Harrell, I'm going to open up with you and talk about some of this legislation.
Oh, well, I am so excited about what we have done for early learning. Pre-K, VPK as it's known, has been a major endeavor for many years. As you may remember, we passed this as part of a constitutional amendment back in, I believe, 2004. And we have implemented it over the last, and really excited about it because I think that getting garden is key. And we want to make sure every kid has the opportunity to be ready to start kindergarten.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, over the many years that we've been doing this, we have not seen the results that we really expected. So we really, over the last 3 years, I worked very closely with Representative Grawl in the House of Representatives, and she and I have been partners in this endeavor, working with our early learning coalitions and especially with Marcia, and to really say, how do we revamp our VPK system? And how do we revamp our early learning? Because we really have a great program of early learning for kids before VPK. A lot of moms work, and we have daycare, early learning, and that should be a prep to move into voluntary pre-K into school. We want that seamless transition through. Right. So kids get the best opportunities. That's what we want for our kids. When you only have, 60% of your kids ready for kindergarten, when we're spending this kind of money, we spend $400 million a year on VPK.
Wow. And
you're only getting, and 40% of your kids are not ready.
Wow.
We need to rethink this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we really did. And we worked very closely with Marcia and VPK providers and with the Department of Education, with the Early Learning Coalitions, as well as the Department of Early Learning.
Sounds like
the
a
Office
huge
of Early
task
Learning.
that you undertook.
Huge task. And it's been an ongoing process. You don't do this easily.
Right.
You have a lot of vested interests. And but I think at the end of the day, we have a good product, a lot of compromises along the way, but we have a good product that is really over the next few years going to make some significant change so that every kid is ready for kindergarten.
Well, that is wonderful. So tell us about these main changes. What is different now and over the next few years? I'm sure it's something that you're going to probably institute or start gradually.
One of the main things is as we look at our providers and we look at what the children are learning, kids come to VPK on different levels, depending on what their background is, if they have been in early learning, or if they're coming directly from their family. It depends on what the vocabulary is, the
Right.
language in their family is. They come at different levels. So we want to assess children when they first come into VPK and the progress.
Okay.
So, we want kids ready, but we also, a provider who is moving a child from, say, if you use a 10-point scale from 3 to 8, they may not be 10 and may not be what we call ready. But think of the progress versus a kid who comes in at 7 and moves to 8.
Right. Okay.
So in our assessment, we are looking at progress, and then also making sure that our VPK providers have the tools to do this. We're upping the level of training for people in VPK, and making sure that kids that they're getting the kinds of things that they need. And we also are requiring on-site visits. A lot of certifications of VPK, we didn't site visit.
So who's visiting and who's overseeing the VPK?
We have, we'll determine that.
Okay.
There are providers who do this kinds of certification. We want to make those certifying bodies.
Okay.
We're going to evaluate those certifying bodies.
Okay.
To make sure that they're meeting certain standards. But we're also looking at these kids to make sure that if we identify, especially on reading, if we identify kids who are struggling and who are going to have a problem in reading, if you identify them very early in VPK and move them into kindergarten, we can really start making services available earlier to them and teach them with the appropriate methodologies. And especially if you have a predisposition for dyslexia and things of that sort, the earlier you can start with brain development. And children's brains are very malleable.
Right.
And the earlier you start with the right methodologies to teach children with learning disabilities, the more success you will have. And we've proven that over the many, many years.
And this sounds very important. I remember that literacy through, by the 3rd grade, the child is going to be at a level that's going to really impact the rest of their educational career. So,
and we're also looking at the governance models and how we're doing this. We want to make sure our early learning coalitions are preparing those kids to come into our VPK system, because we spend a huge amount of money in our early learning coalitions. And they decide, we're empowering them to make sure that the providers that they are contracting with for kids in the early learning situations are good providers. So we want to empower our early learning coalitions.
A checks and balance. That
checks and
very
balances.
Good. So the Early Learning Coalition, I'm going to take your words, Marcia, because it's right off the website. The Early Learning Coalition of Indian River, Martin, and Okeechobee counties, in partnership with the Office of Early Learning in Tallahassee, administers federal and state child care funds to deliver comprehensive early learning services. The coalition oversees 3 programs for our 3-county area: the School Readiness Program, the Voluntary Pre-Kindergarten Education Program, and Child Care Resource and Referral Services. The School Readiness Programs offers financial assistance to low-income families for early education and care, so they can become financially self-sufficient and their young children can be successful in school in the future. And there are 3 requirements to participate. Parents and guardians must be working or participating in an educational activity, such as attending college or trade school at least 20 hours per week. Secondly, gross income must be at or below 100% of the federal poverty level for family size. And third, families must pay a copayment for childcare based on income and family size. So, Marcia, you are the CEO. You're heading up this program here in the area. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing and how the legislation that Senator Harrell is working on has impacted the Early Learning Coalition.
So specifically, I think our governance model is changing, which prior to this legislation, we were kind of a dotted line to DOE. The State Board of Education didn't have a lot of oversight, and now they will.
Okay.
And it's really creating a system that for kids that are participating in our programs from birth until 20, really all the way through college, will be under the control or the oversight of one agency now. So that really creates the ability for us to share data.
Sounds important. I mean,
it is very important, because right now we don't have that ability to share with kindergarten teachers what children are doing in VPK.
Okay.
You would think that we would, but we don't. So that's going to be a really important thing for us to be able to share that, so that the kindergarten teachers know where kids are. But I think the most significant thing is the pre and post test in VPK. That really helps our VPK teachers drive instruction throughout the year. So they know where kids are coming in. They know the work that they need to do to get those kids ready for school. Right now, those tests, we have monitorings going on, but this will really be something like a progress monitoring tool throughout the year that VPK teachers will be able to use. And currently, the readiness test is given in the first 30 days of kindergarten. So when kids complete VPK in May, they're not taking a test until August.
Okay.
And they're going to a big school for the very first time. So it's really, creating that atmosphere, that comfort for those children to take that test during VPK. I think we'll get a better measure of what they're truly learning during that time period.
Right. And what they've retained and so that when they are ready for kindergarten, it's going to be very interesting. I'm sure the teachers are going to absolutely love this. So they know which students will need a little boost with help with reading and those that are going to be already up to speed. So these are really huge changes.
Yeah, we use a monitoring tool called Class, and it'll be the first time that we are monitoring VPK classrooms across the state. We do that in some of our private providers now if they also enroll school readiness children. But this will be across the board. Every classroom in the state of Florida will get an assessment. And that's really an assessment of the teacher and the teacher's interaction with children throughout the day. So for us and our focus here, and specifically in Martin County through the support of the Children's Services Council, we have really focused on elevating teachers and helping them become more engaged in the classroom, because what we know is that we can put those resources into a child for 1 year, but we can put those resources to work in a teacher for many years. So we're finding a really significant impact in our literacy area. So thanks to their support.
Is that basically what the program focuses on, is literacy?
It really is that early learning is really literacy focused. There are other pieces of that. They still teach shapes and age appropriate things with mathematics and those types of things, but we are really focused on literacy as our main focus.
Which makes a lot of sense. We were speaking earlier how important that is for a child's educational career. How are you reaching families to enter the VPK? I mean, everybody's heard about it, but how are you reaching them? And Senator Harrell, you said they can actually start in the program before VPK.
Yeah, if they're income eligible, they can come into our school readiness program, and then that's just a natural progression into VPK. But we do a lot of outreach events at the Early Learning Coalition. We participate in a lot of community events. We use social media. Events like this, participating in things like this just to get the word out, because of COVID, VPK 2%.
Wow.
So parents chose not to enroll their children in VPK. So it'll be interesting what those kids now entering kindergarten, it'll be interesting to see what the impact is.
Again, we're speaking with Marcia Powers. She's the CEO of the Early Learning Coalition here in the area. And we have Senator Gail Harrell with us as well, who helps with this VPK. And Senator Harrell, I saw you a couple months back and you were so excited about this legislation. And
yes, as I said, I've worked on this for 3 years and we've had various iterations of it. And it finally all came together. And as Marcia said, I think one of the most important things is this coordinated system. And when you go from birth through community college or state college, I think you're going to see some major changes as you really are looking at a continuum. And step 1 leads to step 2, and it all builds so that child is ready for kindergarten and that they then have the ability to progress. You set that early stage, and it is so important for kids. So it's very exciting. And we also have now a statewide committee task force that is going to be really looking as we move forward into how we develop this and continue to improve it. So the governor has appointees, the Senate has appointees, and the House has appointees.
Okay.
So this is going to be an ongoing work in progress. And they will make recommendations back to Department of Education and also to the legislature so that we will continue the work that this is. This is the beginning. And as we see progress being made, or we see maybe we need to tweak it here and there, nothing is perfect. This is not a perfect world. And we need to continue to monitor as we do this. When I see the changes that have happened in education over the last 20 years, it is absolutely amazing. And we are trying to continue that progress. And having this continuum, I think, is key to continuing the progress we've been making.
It certainly is. And to have the ability to try and monitor and to test, to see results, I'm sure is just, it's a huge advantage and a bonus for all the kids. So we know how they're progressing. And as you said, if there's something that needs work, you can go back and help that child in that area without being able to monitor or assess it.
Assessment matters, and you can't change things unless you know where things are.
Right.
So you have to be able to assess and continue that process. Accountability is important.
Accountability is very important. I agree.
And you've got to be able to then make sure that you're adjusting and making the changes and meeting the needs of that individual child. And having that continuum allows us to really be able to look across the spectrum, see at what level you want to do, and you need to make what changes so that when you get out here and you get to third grade, you can read, and then you can read to learn thereafter.
Right, which is what it's about. So, then, Marcia, you took over the helm. It was about a year ago, year and a half?
3 years
Three?
ago.
Oh, my goodness.
I know, right?
Time goes so fast when you're having fun,
really
right?
does.
I know.
I remember when you called and said you were appointed, and it just doesn't seem like it's been 3 years. So you have been at the helm for 3 years. I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes. Tell us a little bit about what changes you have seen over the 3 years, and also what happens in VPK? Like, what is the curriculum? What are the children learning, or how are they learning? And then the other question I have as a follow-up is, we're going to test now to see where the children are at when they're moving into kindergarten. How does the teacher handle the differences?
So I think that, first of all, I'll talk a little bit about curriculum. So all of our providers have to participate in a state approved curriculum. So they select from a list approved by the Department of Education. A new list just came out this past year, and we were fortunate in our 3 counties to support our providers in providing grants for them to purchase this new curriculum. And we have really encouraged our providers in our 3-county area to look at the same curriculum so that we're able to provide robust support. We can focus on one type of curriculum. And what we have partnered with some of our school districts as well, so that they're actually using the same curriculum in VPK and in kindergarten. So it's a really smooth transition for the kids when they go from VPK to kindergarten. And it also gives the teacher a really good baseline of where those kids are, where they're starting, what maybe their issues had been. We have a really great partnership with Indian River County School District, and we've created a data sharing system with parental consent. So it's been really great. And we hope to duplicate that in the other 2 counties that we serve. So that's been really great. And, when we talk about assessment, I want parents to know this is not a high stakes test. This is not a test that, is going to impact their children or how they're placed in kindergarten in any way. This is just really a tool for teachers, a tool for parents, a tool for administrators to be able to look at data and know where kids are and what their needs are moving forward. So I just want to make that clear, because I know a lot of parents are concerned about high stakes tests, and that is not what this is. This is really just a tool so we can assure that those kids are growing the way they should.
And that's good to note, because I'm, picturing 3 and 4-year-olds, and it's hard to have their attention for more than 10 seconds. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about little kids here.
Right.
So
it will be age appropriate.
Right.
Yeah.
So this isn't a test that you can't get into kindergarten because you didn't pass VPK.
Right.
That's not what it's about. So.
No, it's not what it's about.
But it does make sense to be able to assess if the program's working, where their strengths, what's working for the kids at that age, because that's a challenge on itself. And to the teachers, I totally respect you. I think COVID has made all of us realize how wonderful teachers are and how much patience they truly have.
Absolutely.
Groups of kids. So,
another point is in that assessment is that it identifies the children who are struggling,
Okay.
who are having a problem in specific areas, and that allow for when they get into kindergarten, it opens the door for services.
Right.
So
okay.
you really, that early identification and early services and specific methodologies used to teach them is very, so it really will allow us to make huge kids who are struggling.
I'm wondering too, as I'm listening to down the road, if it'll become even more seamless that with the testing, children in certain classes, so they have similar capabilities. So all the kids in this class, this class may be struggling and this class excels, instead of mixing the struggling with the children that excel, if you understand what I'm saying. So there's, we have 3 or 4 different kindergarten classes. It would be really neat to be able to put similar capabilities in each class. I don't know if that's
that is not contemplated at this point. That is not the direction. The direction is, and most of the services that are offered are in small groups and particular to individuals.
Right.
So I don't know that that's the direction that we'll go. But as I said, part of the legislation sets up this task force that will continue to look at this. And to me, that's a key point. And to make sure that we are making recommendations that to the Department of Education as we move forward. And that is key. And it's made up of a diverse group of people, from parents to educators to a whole community of people who are really going to monitor this and look at this.
And we have people, professionals on staff at the Early Learning Coalition who really look at this data now that we currently use, the assessments that we currently use in VPK, and set up services for children that we already see struggling. This will just be a very cohesive system that will be used the same across the state of Florida. So we'll be able to, I think the tool, the progress monitoring tool, will allow us to catch things quicker, but we'll also be able to see how they're progressing throughout the year with the interventions that we offer in the classroom. So we have on staff, it's sad, but it's a reality of COVID, is that one of the things that our inclusion specialists have been dealing with the most is behavior. So teachers are really having a difficult time with kids acting out during class. So they really have been in there working on that social emotional development for kids, specifically through COVID. So
that has to have been just the biggest challenge this past year, really at all ages, but especially the little ones. I mean, social interaction is so important, especially for children. So, having to deal with COVID, and were you able to administer the program at a home type basis, or?
We did. There were some like virtual VPK classrooms that were able to be implemented, mostly at the school district level. The school district VPKs, our private providers really didn't have the capability to do that, but
it was a challenge for everybody.
It was.
So hopefully we're getting to the end of that with the vaccinations, and we're going to take a really quick break, and we're going to come back. We have Senator Harrell and CEO Marcia Powers of the Early Learning Coalition in the studio. Well, welcome back. Appreciate you tuning in to the K.C. Ingram Show. In the studio this week, we have Senator Gail Harrell and Marcia Powers, who we know is chair of the Martin County School Board, but today she's wearing a different hat. She's CEO of the Early Learning Coalition of Martin, Okeechobee, and Indian River counties. So we're talking about legislation that really it's a huge changing legislation that's making it more seamless for our VPK attendees moving into the public school system, into kindergarten. So talking about assessing also certified is it instructors, teachers at the VPK level, and just ways to monitor the progress of the kids. So there's been a lot of changes. During the break, we were talking a little bit, what if a child scores poorly? Are they able to repeat or?
What we have learned is, especially with COVID, the impact on kids, on young kids, has been so significant. You know, when you think about kids not being able to be in the classroom, and especially at the young ages, the children are hands-on learners.
Right.
You know, and they interact. If you are trying to do that on a screen, now I know our kids like their screens. There's no doubt. I have 8 grandchildren in my house right now, and I can tell you they like their screens.
It's a fun household. It is
8 grandkids visiting. But little kids, especially, it's hands-on. And it is really learning by doing and hearing, saying, touching.
Right.
It's so important. So, and even all through elementary school, especially, it's very teacher-student interaction, which is hard to get on Zoom. Very hard to
Very
get.
hard.
So what we've determined, and I think this is an important thing for parents to know, as we're just about to get into the school years around the corner, and parents will be having those conversations about decision making for this coming year. If you want your child to repeat the year, or if you want them to do VPK again, or you want them to go repeat kindergarten, you can do that. If you feel that first grade didn't get them what they really needed, you can talk to your principal, talk to the school district, and you can have that child repeat the year. And that's
very important.
Very important. We have just seen a lot of kids struggle this year.
Yes.
Not just with the learning, also the emotional side of it. And the behavioral side of it. So if this has been problematic and you feel that your child would benefit by repeating the year, you can do that.
You can do that. There's no penalties.
No penalties. There's no problem. A lot of, actually, some parents kept their kids out of school and decided not to do kindergarten.
Okay.
So I think we're expecting a resurgence in our kindergartens. We're going to have a lot of numbers. I know as a school board member, Marcia, you're probably looking at that and the numbers.
I was going to ask you.
We did have a decrease. I don't have the numbers for enrollees in kindergarten for this year, but I know we did have a significant decrease last year, mainly due to the fact that some parents did choose to not enroll their children because of COVID and, the lack of interaction. But a lot of families moved. There was a lot of transition happening. Families were going to stay with other family members during COVID. It just really was, everybody was in flux. So parents made decisions that were best for their family and for their child. And we totally respect that and hope that we can meet those kids where they are now. So we're ready in the school district to welcome kids, whether they attended VPK or they didn't, or they attended kindergarten or didn't. We're ready to meet them where they are, and for parents to hopefully re-engage in the school system this year.
Did that impact funding? I assume because you always have the student count for funding.
Well, it didn't impact us last year because there was kind of a hold harmless clause last year because of COVID and the shutdowns and all the things that were happening. But it could potentially impact our budget this year.
Okay.
And we'll know that probably sometime around October when we have our first count.
Okay.
Yeah.
And of course, level we pay on a per student basis.
It's
a FEFP formula that determines how the school districts receive their dollars.
So did they get a reprieve last year because of COVID?
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, we didn't take money back.
That makes sense because
we had no idea what was going to happen.
Year. Right.
So everybody was held harmless.
And they could come back and be gone on the day with the count.
Have the count.
It's super tough. While you're wearing your And I do have a question that came in from RJ Pazzi. Has the Martin County School District collected the missed $500,000 payment from the city of Stewart yet? And if not, why not? I don't know what this payment's about, but
I can't say with all certainty, so I would have to get back with you on that one, and I can share that with you, Casey, and
okay,
maybe you can relay
I
that.
certainly
I
will.
wouldn't want to misspeak on that. We've had conversations about it, but I would have to
okay,
double check.
find out where that stands. Thank you. Jill B., are you providing informed consent if they choose to retain their child in early elementary school? The child may be at risk for double retention if they don't pass the FSA. There are many variables at play here that should be clear.
I think they need to speak with the school district on that. The legislation provides that you may you may have your child repeat the year.
Okay.
I would assume that that's a hold harmless, but I don't know that for sure.
Okay.
And that may be school board policy to determine that. But at the state level, choose to hold your child back and repeat the year.
Reach out to their principal or district staff specifically about that, because we do have a student progression plan in place, and understand that as they're making that decision for their child, really truly understand what the implications may be in the future.
Okay. Thank you both for that answer, and good question, Jill B. So there has been so many things that are going on with legislation. I'm going to turn back to you, Senator Harrell, because there's a lot coming up this year too. So I think let's step back. Let's talk about some of the other legislation you championed, because I think there was a lot of bills. I
A lot of bills. I think they're about 14 or 15.
It was incredible. I think lobby tools, I don't know if it's correct, but I looked this morning. It's like sponsored bills 19, co-sponsored 14, sponsored amendments 39. So there was a lot happening. And you look at about 2,000 bills that come through.
3,000.
3,000. I was off at
Yeah.
that. But you sponsored quite a few bills. So tell us about some of the other bills you championed that worked out really well.
Well, I'm very, very excited about what's going on in the environment. Of course, we're so concerned here in our area. And I want to talk a little bit about the money that we have, really continuing the hard work that we have done on stopping the releases from Lake Okeechobee. As you know, I passed Legacy, Florida about 5 or 6 years ago.
That seems like yesterday to me as well, but you're right.
Hard to believe. But major progress in the dollars, especially that we are putting into it. That legislation required that we put at least $200 million every year into Expansive Everglades restoration. But this year, we were able to put $356 million.
$356 million. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Congratulations. That's huge.
A huge chunk into that. And I think we're making great progress in building the infrastructure that is necessary in order to do that. And we also put a whole lot of money into infrastructure, into roads and bridges. And of course, we've had the problem here with our bridge.
Oh, my goodness. Yes. We all remember
since,
that.
My office is in the same building we're in right now.
Yes.
And it was taking me 55 minutes to
Yes, Senator, you live on the other side. That
to
was
get to the office. But also, I'm very pleased to report, as chairman of transportation, that we have put huge resources into making sure all our bridges, we're doing testing of every single one of these types of bridges that are that really are the segmented bridges where you're putting pieces together.
Good.
And we've also we're changing. I did MCOR's bill, Senate Bill 100, that really looked at some legislation we had done previously on establishing 3 new toll roads in the state, and looked at the fiscal feasibility and where they should be.
Okay.
So we reoriented, and those of us who drive up and down.
You've been
week.
to Tallahassee back and forth.
We're restructuring how we do that, and we're going to continue and have another alternative way.
Okay.
To get to I-10.
Boy, that'll be
further west.
That will be nice. Orlando's such a nightmare to go through at 5.
Looking at really putting money into bypasses
Okay.
and existing road structure as opposed to building new turnpikes
Okay.
and cutting into especially environmentally sensitive lands.
Right.
Which was one of the major criticisms that the task force identified, was that we were going to be actually cutting through very sensitive lands and not being able to, especially in rural areas, you can't get across.
That's okay. That's usually me that has the phone ringing, but we'll let that one pass. You
I
can
will
slide.
turn
Senator
that
Harrell, this is a
off.
first. Actually, she's always good
I
at turning her
apologize.
phone off.
Now, if that happened in a committee I was chairing, it would cost you $5.
Oh gosh.
To Hibiscus Children's Center.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So I'm going
That's
to
a
have
good
to
little
make my
rule.
donation.
Okay. You're on air. $5 coming in.
$5 going to Hibiscus.
That's great.
So sorry.
No, that's quite all right.
But
So-
I do, so I'm excited about what we're doing in infrastructure, and we're putting huge resources. And we did just get some CARES dollars and some
Yes.
American Rescue Plan dollars that are specifically going into infrastructure and into
Okay.
roads and things that will continue the progress we're making on our infrastructure in the state of Florida. So it's an ongoing process.
Right, right.
You don't do these kinds of things quickly.
No, of course not. It doesn't ever seem to be. How about sewer or septic to sewer conversions?
Absolutely. We put huge money again into septic to sewer. We have a special grant program we started on septic to sewer conversion, huge dollars going into that as well. I think that's a major part. Also, storage of water north of the lake.
Wonderful.
When you look at what's happening in the Orlando area, having just been to Disney, as you said,
I was.
the
Right.
and the anticipation of being running out of water in that area with the population growth is significant.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we're doing water storage up there,
Okay.
as well as making sure that it then doesn't come out the St. Lucie River.
Right. Like Okeechobee and over
Yeah.
to us. So.
Yes. So the whole, whether it's from an environmental perspective or from a roads perspective, a bridge perspective, we've put huge resources into that. So very successful this year.
Do you see the state getting involved at all with the Champlain Towers that collapsed in Miami? Will there be some sort of legislation you think that'll come up trying to address our older buildings in the state? Because that's just so frightening what happened at that property.
Yes, certainly that is very concerning to all of us. And the city of Surfside has contracted with one of the best structural engineering firms in the country.
Okay.
To really look at what happened and the reasons for it. And once we get that analysis of what really were the defects. Now we've looked at the report that was done 2 years earlier as part of their 40-year recertification process. And it is evident that there were structural problems identified 2 years ago. And that the recommendation to the board was that they make some changes and do some repairs to the tune of $15 million. And they were not done.
Oh.
So, we don't know whether that would have prevented what happened or not.
Right.
But we're going to take an in-depth look at that.
Well, you had mentioned here with our bridge, we have a kind of a special environmental or atmosphere here because we have the salt water and you have steel and corrosion. So I think that was part of our Roosevelt Bridge issue. But, you have to really, it's a special area here in the state of Florida where with construction, you have to worry about
Absolutely.
how the rebar is coated.
Yes. And I think those are the kinds of things that once we get that structural engineering report, we can do some further evaluation. I don't want to preempt that.
Right.
And make, any comments until we really have the concrete reasons.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. So that we know, we can make appropriate decisions. But, this is kind of an aberration in that it's the first time anything like this has ever happened. So we have to find out why.
Why and
how do you evaluate?
Right.
I think the city of Surfside and certainly Miami-Dade County is looking at similar buildings, and I know several have been evacuated and people have been moved out. But that's part of what we need to do. We have to realize where we live and make sure that we're putting in place the appropriate processes for evaluation, but not overreacting.
Right.
You know, you have to be so careful that you don't overreact until, and that you have the facts before
Right.
you make decisions.
Right. Facts are doing. Another large item on the agenda coming up is redistricting.
Oh, yes.
We have had a census. We are going to redistrict the state. I know with their congressional seats, I think we're getting
One.
just one. I was going to say it was one or two. I heard it was supposed to be two and it ended up being one.
It was supposed to be 2, but I think there was somewhat of an undercount because of COVID.
Right.
And New York retained a seat that should have come to us, I think.
Oh, we have so many people moving here. I know it was shocking
Yes.
only to have one. So, but we have to wait
Yes.
another 10 years for another count.
I
But
know.
there'll be one congressional. What do you see what's happening with the state seats?
Well, I think we actually won't get the final numbers until September.
Okay.
So Senator Ray Rodriguez has been appointed chair of the Senate committee.
Okay.
It's a select committee. The president has not announced the additional members to that committee, but Senator Ray Rodriguez from the Naples area will be chair of the committee. I know him for many, many years. I served with him in the House, and I know he will be very helpful. We need to make sure that we do this following the Constitution. And as you know, we had a constitutional amendment 10 years ago
Right.
that established fair districts, and all counties must be kept whole if possible, and cities must be kept whole if possible. And I know that we will follow that to the letter. And now we'll just have to wait and see till we get those final numbers and is together and can look at those. But it's a difficult process because I know at the Senate, at the U.S. congressional level, districts cannot differ by more than 2 people.
Wow.
So you will literally at the end of the day be splitting streets
Oh my goodness.
as
Okay.
to how many
Right.
people
Because that's what it comes down to is
Yes.
is by population.
by population. And on the local level or the state, on the state level, I think it's 3%, 2 or
Okay.
3%. So it's a small number, but it's not down like
2 people.
congressional
That's
seats.
Mhm.
I mean,
You
that almost could
also-
split a household.
yeah.
2 people.
You also have to have the appropriate number of minority access districts.
Okay.
So
Huh.
again, that is by federal voting law that the districts have to be balanced and have minority access. I believe I'm going back 10 years from
Okay.
the last redistricting, as I believe that it is, you have to have 50% plus 1 minority in that minority of individuals
Okay.
who are to allow commensurate with the state, so that you have the opportunity for a minority to be elected. We have, I believe, our population, and I don't know what the new numbers will be. I believe we're about 13% African American, and we're about 17 or 18% Hispanic.
Okay.
I don't know if those are the current numbers, but that is where we have been. So that number of 13% of our districts must be 50 minority access district, 50% plus 1 minority
Okay.
in order to be a minority access district.
Okay.
So we'll be very specific and very careful to meet all those requirements.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot to redistricting that people
Yes.
don't understand for certain. So
So when it looks like, in fact, I use the district from the Jacksonville area, goes all the way across from Jacksonville to Tallahassee. And people say, is
Wow.
that not a gerrymandered district? What are you doing there? But that is a minority access
Okay,
district. In
okay.
order to have the adequate number of minorities, in order to represent the state,
okay.
you have to be able to make sure you have those numbers. So sometimes the districts look a little strange, but if at all possible, because of the constitutional amendment, we have to keep the counties whole and cities whole.
My goodness. I'm glad I'm not in charge of,
There are
this committee. It does. It sounds like it's a huge undertaking and a large. I'm sure it's wonderful to have.
But we
So-
will be very specific and very open. Part of the issue is we want people to have the information. Transparency is absolutely key in this process.
Well, it's going to be interesting as well because 2022 will be our next election year, and people will not know necessarily what their district is until you redistrict it
Correct.
in session next year.
Yes.
So it's going to be kind of a short campaign season, I think.
Yes. And one of the reasons we do have early session was started, in redistricting years. We
Okay.
do early session. And then, of course, several years ago, we had the constitutional amendment that set it up as the rotating basis, early and late sessions.
Okay. And it's early this coming
And
session,
it's early
so
this year.
it worked out.
Yes.
As it should, right?
As it should.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about some of the legislation you worked on session. Again, we talked about all those numerous bills that you worked on and you helped sponsor. So I know we talked about transportation and certainly with the kids, the Early Learning Coalition with Marcia Powers.
Yes. Well, we've continued working in dyslexia. I'm very passionate about students with dyslexia and making sure that we have that they have the opportunity to learn appropriately with teachers using the methodology that works for them. And that is a very hands-on, very structured, phonetically and based system.
Okay.
And we're moving now from whole language more to that phonics-based types of system. And we want to make sure that our kids with dyslexia are identified early. And part of the VPK and then also part of Representative Alupas's bill I said that we will make those special services available down into the kindergarten level.
Wonderful.
We identified those kids. You used to have to wait till first grade.
Oh my goodness.
And we now will be able to have those special services in kindergarten, which will be key. We also want to make sure that our teachers are trained appropriately. And I think that's a key element. So there are parts of that bill that really set up the continuing education requirements for teachers. We also looked at what we call the special reading designation for teachers.
Okay.
And making sure that those students who have dyslexia or perhaps are identified as struggling readers are taught by teachers with appropriate education. So it's a comprehensive bill. It's really going to continue the work that we have done in dyslexia in order to make sure that kids get the opportunities to learn.
Absolutely. Senator Harrell, I know that has been one of the items that you've been passionate about for years. We've talked about it, in the past when you've come to the studio. So in Marcia, I'm sure as well, dyslexia, I mean, that truly, the earlier that is identified, the better for the child.
And we'll be able to use those tools in VPK actually to have those early interventions as early as VPK or birth. Honestly, when we start as teachers start to interact with students and they identify them at the Early Learning Coalition, our professionals will be able to go in when they're properly trained to identify that as early as possible, because what we know is early intervention is what really helps children succeed in school. And the quicker we get that determined that they have dyslexia, the quicker they are to pick up their reading and literacy in general. And I know Senator Harrell did not mention, I know she strongly supported House Bill 3, which was an initiative supported by both the House and the Senate. And Representative Trabulsi in St. Lucie County championed this bill, and it's the New World Reading and Literacy Initiative, and it's really, really exciting. It will be rolling out to parents. I know they're creating partnerships now to get this information out to parents, but it is a bill that will provide a book a month to children, specifically our most at-risk families that maybe don't have access to books in their home. So the kids will start receiving these books in the mail, and it's going to be a really great initiative for the kids that don't have access to those types of, and it'll be age appropriate based on their age. But it's also, and we were talking about parental rights earlier, and I think that it's really important that parents understand that how important it is to read to your child. Right. And this initiative will give them a tool and hopefully they'll be able to expand their bookshelf as their kids learn to love reading, and they do too. So the parents.
And a love of reading does start early. So mailing out those books, that's absolutely wonderful. And it's going to be exciting for the children to receive it in the mail.
A treat to
Exactly.
get something in the mail for them and a special book for them. So it's teaching them to love books.
That is wonderful. So you said it's age-appropriate books. You had talked about the task force. And how do people join that if they're interested in becoming part of the task force that oversees the VPK or early learning?
If they're interested, there's specific members that are appointed by specific individuals. The governor has a list of people he appoints. I didn't bring the list with me, but if anybody is interested in that, they can contact my office.
Okay. So parents can get involved if they want to. So very exciting. We just have 2 minutes, and Senator Harrell, I don't know if you have time to answer this question. To know what is Tallahassee doing about the minimum wage that will decimate any remaining sole proprietor small business? So minimum wage is going up. And
minimum wage is going up, and that is the result of a constitutional amendment. So the legislature really has no impact on that. We did raise the minimum wage for all state workers to $13 an hour this last session as part of our budget, and it will be implemented over a period of years. But that is legislatively, there is nothing that can be done.
Because it's a constitutional amendment. People voted on it.
People voted for it, and
it was over 60.
Take 60%, but that was a constitutional amendment, and that will be the law of the land.
So there it is. Next week, I want to let everybody know I'm going to be on vacation again. I just got back from Disney World for 3 days. I'm so sore, but going up to North Carolina. But Richard Geisinger will be back in the studio, and he is bringing in Sandra Thurlow again, and she is the area historian, one of them, and wonderful. She was on the show a couple months ago, and everybody said, is she going to come back? And we'd love to hear about the history of Stewart and Martin County. So that's going to be next week. And then after that, I'm going to have on Marcia's husband, Kevin Powers, and he's going to be talking about the Martin County Taxpayer Association. So that'll be a really good show as well. So we have some good shows coming up. And then again, that's next week. But for right now, Marcia, Senator Harrell, thank you so much for joining me in the studio. Great updates, exciting legislation. And can't wait to see what comes up here in this next year.
Thank you so very much for having us.
Yes. It is always my pleasure, and we look forward to future updates. So again, Ray, I think you're ready to take us out. I'm getting the sign, and we'll see you next week. Again, Richard Geisinger, Sandra Thurlow, you won't want to miss that, and tune in. She'll have a lot of fun facts in the area of Martin County.